So a bunch of people asked me to make a video about shaving my head, about being bald. Maybe like 5 people, and they're all guys. I guess they're guys who are dealing with going bald or with shaving their heads. And he wanted to, they phrased it in different ways. Like, how did you own this as part of your identity? And you seem to think it's an interesting topic. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I started shaving my head before I started going bald. So I started shaving my head when I was still in high school. I think I was 16. It's possible I just turned 17. Oh, great. Sorry, I didn't even notice. Yeah, I'm wearing my branded T-shirt here because I'm gonna go. Yeah, right. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, right. Anyway, yeah, because I'm ready to go to the gym.
So it was a style choice, right?
No.
Was it just that it was easier for you? Or?
No. I'm gonna say no 6 more times. No. No, so for me, I got a question on an unrelated, but yet profoundly related topic on Discord, where someone was asking me about going vegan in my life before I went vegan and some of these kind of ethical and aesthetic choices. Before I even became vegan and before I got involved with Buddhism, I already had a lot of stuff in my life that reflected this kind of ersatz, militaristic, self-disciplined aesthetic, right? So I've told you this way back then, I guess 16. Again, it could have been 15, but, back then, I got rid of all my furniture. I had a bedroom where I slept directly on the floor. And the only, furniture I had, the only little bits and pieces I had, it could be fold up and put it away in the closet. It was a small closet. So if friends came over, I painted the walls of the room silver. I had a metallic silver walls and a gray carpet.
Wow.
And yeah, I had this very bare, and I got into this kind of, so,
Did you use blankets at night?
So I went through a period of not even using blankets. That's right. Yeah. And then I go over. Well, no, but okay. So why did I do that? I was horrified by the fact I knew a lot of kids growing up who said, "Oh, I can't sleep without this comforter. I can't sleep without this heavy blanket." I met a couple kids who said they literally couldn't sleep without having the radio on. They needed the noise of hearing the radio. I don't know if you've known people like that. I met all these people who had these weird requirements for how they slept. And again, I was growing up in the shadow of the Cold War. I told you we did a video about this a few days ago where it was like, World War III is coming. And again, the sense of toughening up for it was partly intellectual and partly physical and partly pragmatic and what have you. But it was this sense of, I live in a decadent culture. Nobody's prepared to deal with anything. None of these people can sleep in a tent if they have to or sleep on the ground if they have to. And, I want to learn to sleep without a pillow. I want to learn to sleep without, blankets that I'm comfortable with or used to or something, So there was this sense of, and it does. It ultimately does, connect a little bit to the ancient Greek stuff. A lot of that stuff, the Stoics and the Skeptics, and there's a lot of discussion.
Yeah,
you haven't read that.
Spartan.
Well, right. You haven't read that side of the Greek philosophy. But the Stoa, who are now remembered as the Stoics, and the Skeptics and the debates surrounding them, there was a lot of talk about kind of what does it mean to toughen yourself up. And their conception of it had a lot to do with, when you're thirsty, not drinking water immediately. It wasn't like bodybuilding. You know what I mean? It wasn't absolute strength. It was a kind of intellectual. It was kind of strength of character that they were interested in, which is, but anyway, it appeals to 15-year-old boys reading some of that stuff. So yeah, it's this sense of wanting to live a meaningful life, wanting to live a self-disciplined life. And, when I figured out, there was this girl I had a crush on, and she took me aside, and she explained to me that I didn't know anything about hair care, right? My parents had never taught me how to do anything.
What?
Yeah. She was like, look, you don't actually know how to shampoo your hair and shit, which was true. I'd never been taught anything, I had really thick, curly hair. And I was like, no, if you don't actually, work it in with your fingertips and then do this and then this. She taught me through these, 6 steps. Yeah. I never slept with her. I wonder if my whole life would be different in a weird way if I had. But you can tell she and I were we were close. We were intimate in a sense. That she was actually in my bathroom explaining to me how to shampoo my hair and stuff. Yeah. Oh. But that's how it is when you're a teenager. Or it was for me. I remember having kind of close relationships with women I didn't sleep with who weren't my girlfriend. But I remember talking about that, and I realized okay, this whole having hair thing. There's a fork in the road. Basically, I've grown up like a fucking, child in the, I've grown up feral, not knowing what having hair really involves. And this girl has explained to me, look, if you want to have hair, there's all this hair care stuff and hairstyling stuff you got to do, which also made sense because, you know, it was very hard for me to get my hair to look like a normal person's hair. It was just very curly and vibrant. And so you can see that in my daughter. My daughter's got some of my DNA. She has this very, you know, lustrous, high volume hair or whatever.
Yeah, it's totally different. I mean, to wash that kind of hair versus
that's right.
You know, my
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I love your hair, though. You know, when we first met, her hair is not picked up well on camera. The color of her hair IRL kind of a little bit escapes photography. So that was a surprise the first time we met. I remember it was striking to me that all of your coloring, the color of your hair, eyes, and skin was not what I was expecting. Anyway, but yeah, maybe genetically I'm attracted to you so that we can have children with less lustrous hair. Maybe I'm trying to compensate for the hair DNA I've got, the untamable hair. But anyway, it's like there was like this fork in the road, and you realize, like, dude, I'm not going to be a guy who puts an hour into my hair. Yeah. This is ridiculous. And, you know, up to that point I had... So, yeah. So at that point... And then again, the whole thing, I mean... Oh, right, and I didn't mention... Sorry, another thing. I was just mentioning sleeping on the floor. You know, I only ate 2 meals a day for years and years. And then later I found out that actually is a Buddhist thing. That's a traditional Buddhist thing of not eating after lunch, doing breakfast and lunch. And, of course, it doesn't mean... If you wake up at 5 a.m., lunch is pretty late in the day for you, right? Yeah. And some Buddhist monks wake up at 3 a.m. where they're really on just a different... So really they're eating 3 meals a day. They're just not eating after noon, but they go to sleep really early, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, there is a principle in Buddhism for monks of not eating after midday. So yeah, which I didn't know about. But again, it was this very vague sense of wanting to be, you know, self-disciplined and what have you. Yeah, as I was going through puberty. And yeah, struggling with, I mean, look, you know, what is masculinity and what is culture and what is civilization? You know, you look around at, you know, the people I went to school with, you know, I had no positive role models in my life. None. You know, and it's like, well, do you want to end up as a totally decadent, totally fatuous, totally self-indulgent, totally enervated person? I mean, most of the middle-aged people I knew, most of the adults, they couldn't walk 2 or 3 city blocks. You know, this is kind of before, like, here right now in Victoria, everyone wears spandex. Yeah. Everyone does yoga. Everyone goes to the gym. I meet people here in their 50s and 60s who are in great physical shape, you know, but I mean, Toronto at that time, Scotland was even worse. You know, you're surrounded by people who are very, very physically lazy and undeveloped, and who are very, very intellectually and emotionally, you know, lazy and undeveloped. People who, you know, I remember saying people who hadn't read a book since high school, you know, and it's like, well, this is not what I want to be. So what do I want to be? And I didn't find any role models for that in the kind of, you know, in the kind of literature I was presented with. So this is part of my life, like, you don't know, it just never comes up. But like, so Melissa, her BA was in English literature. And in a lot of ways, I know you're dissatisfied with that, which is like English literature was not deep enough, not real enough, not inspiring. I mean, you know, it's not of zero interest, but it's just not. It's a little bit underwhelming to get your BA in English literature. Well, you know, in the same way, I mean, my parents were people who put a lot of value on, you know, literature, you know, in that sense, fiction. So, you know, especially theater. My father, to some extent, worshipped Shakespeare and this kind of stuff, kind of high tradition of English literature in theater. And, you know, of course, the visual arts, painting, the history of art and painting, you know, et cetera, is part of our lives. So when looking at that, I mean, you're looking at those people, you're looking at intellectuals within the tradition of painting and the visual arts and literature and drama. And again, there was nothing, you know, there was nothing positive. There was nothing even more positive as a role model, like compared to Batman, you know. And I mean, you know, a lot of people talk about that as a young man, that, I mean, Batman, it's precisely that he doesn't have superpowers. Well, what did Batman do? He does a lot of push-ups. He reads a lot of books. You know, Batman's superpower is just that he seems to take life seriously. And if you're in a culture or situation where nobody's taking life seriously, you know, where, and even where the model of what it is to be an adult put in front of you, you know, it's people like these kind of lazy, self-indulgent French communist intellectuals. Someone like Jean-Paul Sartre. You know, it's like, well, the image of, you know, an adult revolutionary is someone who sits around smoking cigarettes and cheating on his wife and kind of writing books and poetry about how self-pitying he is about his life as a, you know, an intellectual who cheats on his wife. Or like, really? That was what you were... So, but this is the Gestalt. At that time, wasn't yet cognizant of Buddhism, wasn't yet cognizant of veganism at all when I started shaving my head. but it was part of, wanting to lead a meaningful life. And yeah, I mean, even owning that stuff. You and I both, our bathroom's still real simple. But I mean, owning shampoo and conditioner and figuring out what works for you and hairstyle and paying a barber.
I hate it.
But as a man, okay, women's haircuts are more expensive. Going to a hairstylist is more expensive, but you do it less frequently. As a man, it's supposed to be like every 2 weeks.
I feel like I need to cut my hair because it's been so long.
But you haven't in years, yeah, right?
Yeah,
yeah. But but as a man, you're supposed to be going to a barber like every 2 weeks.
I know.
Look, you just have like normal employable haircut.
Yeah.
So I couldn't believe that. Going in and getting a trim and paying.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort.
Right. So all that, I mean, if you try to estimate how much money and time I've saved by shaving my head versus going to a barber every 2 weeks, it's massive. It's inestimable. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. Probably today you can't get a haircut for $20. They're probably really cheap to have someone else cut your hair. Yeah.
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 So, did you ever feel self-conscious about the fact that you were balding, or was that at all?
Right. Well, I only noticed it probably a long time after it started. Because you're shaving your head, you don't really notice. Mm-hmm. And I remember noticing it for the first time that it was just easier to shave my head kind of up here than over here. It was like, oh, it's less dense there. Uh-huh. So no, it really didn't. It wasn't a part of my life in a big way.
How old were you when you noticed that?
During university, I noticed. Sure. Yeah.
Did your dad shave his head, or did he have baldness?
No, he did bald, but much later in life. Yeah. And of my brothers, you see a spectrum because I have so many brothers.
Right.
From those that balded really early in life, and again, I'm sorry, but guys, male pattern baldness is linked to testosterone levels. And so, one of my brothers, the one who went bald early in life, he's a very high testosterone character with the advantages and disadvantages that it brings. He puts on muscle very rapidly, but he also has a very sharp temper, and he has a lot of those traits. Yeah. And then I have other brothers who kept their hair their whole lives, who have long hair and never went bald and are low testosterone, with a different shape of jaw. It all corresponds to kind of the textbook stuff, the big jaw and the high testosterone levels, as opposed to the more feminine narrow jaw and low testosterone levels. So sadly, yeah, the sciences have predictive power on this topic. But yeah, I didn't know any of that, and I wasn't thinking that way. Yeah, I mean, I think that the real thing that lurks in the background is, one, the symbolic significance of being bald in Buddhism, which then later became a part of my life.
Yeah, did people assume that you were a monk?
It was a big deal. I mean, in Thailand, there were Thai men who were just amazed that I would shave my head. They saw it as a kind of humiliation or humbling thing. Okay, so you're either really serious about Buddhism or you're in the U.S. Marine Corps. For them, that was the only explanation for why a man would shave his head. To them, it was such a big deal, which is very alien. So being in those cultures, that was a big deal, and what being bald meant as a scholar of Buddhism, during that time of my life. I mean, I guess the other one is just, are people going to perceive you as right-wing or a neo-Nazi or something because you're a tall white guy with a shaved head? I think that's been very, very rarely a problem for me. But it does come up once in a while, sure. Yeah, where people see it as a tough look that's associated with, the old... I mean, I don't even know if people are skinheads anymore. The skinhead thing, that's really 1980s.
Yeah.
But, that association that way and stuff, yeah. Sure.
I guess a deterrent would be that you are Jewish. You have Jewish ancestry.
In as much as it comes up, well, and I read Chinese, and I'm involved in all this other stuff that's obviously not, not right wing or what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, head shaving has become mainstream during my lifetime, from being a marginal thing to being a mainstream thing, and I think the main impetus for that was the rise of hip hop culture. Obviously a lot of athletes, black and white, shave their heads. That made it normal. So again, between the 1980s and present, that was a huge change. Where just the number of people you saw on TV or in the newspapers with a shaved head really changed. During my lifetime. So athletes, both black and white, is part of that. But yeah, hip hop culture, huge part of that. Yeah. Where like I told you this, there was a time I can remember when hip hop culture was really marginalized and really stigmatized. And it went to being music you heard in the background of the mall. And then again, it's mostly black artists, but a few white artists also. Just it being completely normal to have adult men with shaved heads, and that really changed the perception of it.
Yeah.
So head shaving went from being something kind of stigmatized. But I mean, yeah, sure. When I was still in high school, like I might have been the only white guy with a shaved head in the whole high school.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't. So I'm trying to remember if there was even in that high school, because I went to 2 high schools. I remember one guy with a shaved head in the earlier high school, which was huge. They had a huge number of students. But in the second high school, I might have been the only guy with a shaved head. You know, so I mean, it wasn't common. It did make you stand out.
Yeah.
But I mean, today, I don't think anyone would say, like, if I go to a job interview, like wearing this suit, like, oh, don't go with a shaved head. Like today, it just doesn't have any negative connotation. It's just a completely normal aspect of modern bourgeois life.
Yeah. That is interesting what you were just saying, that the Thai men would view it as something.
Yeah, it was a big deal for them.
Right.
Yep.
It just made me think of that V for Vendetta scene. Obviously, that's a woman who's shaving her hair, which is totally different. You know, like a woman shaving her head, like, you know, Britney Spears, 2008, like crazy.
Right.
Who actually has really serious mental problems or something. It's totally different between the genders. But, like, it is interesting that for men, it's really not seen as something like, oh, wow, he's gone off the deep end because he's shaved his head or something like that. It's just, like, totally something normal and expected.
Right. Well, I don't know. I think it will be for women in the future too. I mean, you know, it seems to be inevitable. No.
I don't know. It certainly would be a lot easier for a lot of women.
But hey, look. So the other issue you mentioned this apropos some friend of yours is that, you know, once you bare your skull, we're not all equal. I mean, not everyone has a good shape of skull for this hairstyle.
One of my
and
friends
most people don't know it until they shave their head.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One of my friends from high school did shave her head, and she's always wanted to shave off her hair, and she was immediately after she did it, she bought a wig, or she bought like multiple wigs, and she just felt like
she didn't like the way it looked, or
she
didn't like the shape of her head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not every. I mean, you know, so that's a really funny. You know, there's good skull privilege.
Yeah, you do.
Good phrenology, phrenology privilege,
right.
Yeah. And, you know, you could see that a lot. You know, there are minor differences in the shape of the skull for East Asians versus, you know, Europeans. And if you hang around at Buddhist monasteries, you can see that. I've been at Buddhist monasteries where there are white guys, there are Koreans and Chinese guys, and there are, like, people from Sri Lanka. You know, and you got, you know, all with shaved heads, you do actually really see the range of, you know, the phrenological variables, the skull shape of your fellow man.
I'm so happy you recorded a video about this. It's so funny. It's just so unlike your channel to talk about.
I don't know. You were into it. I know you wanted to make the video. It's cool. From my perspective, it was like, I don't know much to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. A lot of people have asked you about it. And,
that's true. Yeah. People asked. Supporters on Patreon asked. Yeah, click on the link below this video to join Patreon.
I think it is true that some men are just attached to their hairstyle, like, and how it makes them look as, you know, their image, and then once that starts to go away, you know, you just mentioned that Jordan Peterson has gotten a hair transplant.
Right.
Elon Musk.
Right.
You know,
so stepping away from the Buddhist monk thing, the real question here is, do chicks dig it? I mean, I think that's, you know, what you're getting at. And, you know, and then the male vanity element. So those are two really interesting examples. Jordan Peterson, who's only 55, he looks 70. I mean, he's aged badly. I'm sorry, let's take out bets on what I'm going to look like at 55 compared to Jordan Peterson. He looks like shit on that all-meat diet. 100% meat diet. He paid for follicle transplants, right? And he's lied about it, or he's avoided admitting it and so on, you know. Which is also interesting.
My all-meat diet brought back my hair.
Exactly, right. Elon Musk, I don't know if he's lied about it, but, you know, that's another public guy who's done this. You know, but I think but if you're not thinking about hair transplant, I mean, I think the question is, will women, you know, in terms of male vanity or being attractive to and how you're perceived by a woman, is it preferable to have a lousy haircut as opposed to being bald? That's the choice most men have, whether you're balding or not, whatever your situation is, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not a guy who's going to put a lot of time and effort into your hair,
right,
you know,
pomade.
Yeah, but most dudes have lousy hair because we don't give a fuck. Most dudes wear a baseball cap. You know what it is. You know, they do not want to put in the time and effort to have fancy hair, and it is. I mean, it seems effeminate. I don't wear jewelry either. Would I be more attracted to women if I wore jewelry and I had fancy hair? This is a real question. You know, the type of women I'm after are not drawn to a man who has those kinds of affectations and what have you, right?
Yeah, right.
So I mean, different strokes for different folks. There's a lid for every pot. Blah blah blah. Blah. I don't know. See, I can't contrast the experience. I don't know what it's like to be a dude with long, flowing hair he puts a lot of time into, and how women react to that. But there were a lot of dudes, doing that. There were a lot of dudes putting in the time and effort to have fancy ass hair. Yeah. But you can be a dude with short hair that still is fancy. That's still a lot of time and effort.
Yes.
You can have a lot of product in your hair, that's and true. Then yeah. But no. I mean, my experience, women are most attracted to me when I'm exhausted, pissed off, and covered with stubble. That's always been my experience. It's exactly when I don't want to deal with women, and when I think I'm looking most ugly. But that ruggedness of having, the stubble all over, being exhausted and pissed off. I remember so many women, it's really, an observable difference from when I'm like clean shaven, well rested and with it or whatever. Yeah. So, what's the moral of that story?
I don't know, but obviously it's at least $1 million industry. I remember watching TV late at night and seeing infomercials for products that claim to make your hair grow back and
Well, okay, but look, there's a parallel here with women's sexuality and beauty. For a man, if you're putting the time and effort into your appearance, is that in order to get women, or is that just in order to compete with other men? I think that's also something. Like, is it that you want to be the dude at the office with the most impressive hair? Like, is it something like that? Like, you feel there's a hierarchy at the office, or a hierarchy at the gym, or what? Like, is it male competition with other men, or is it actually about attention from females?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people never ask themselves that question, honestly, because with women, there's so many women who put the time and effort in, and it's just to show that bitch Kathy at the office, just to show Kathy I can look better than her. Like, it really is like just women competing with other women, and doesn't have to do with what men want or their relationships with men or what have you.
Right.
Yeah. So that's it, man. 21st century head shaving has definitely become mainstream, and. I don't know.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. Come on. More shaved heads. Yeah, I don't know. It is kind of weird, like, to see men that are mostly balding, but they still try to, like, hang on to, like, the sides. And There's a, statues from ancient Greece and, showing men that
Right.
Just a crown, like around
just the last vestiges around their head, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe for them that connotes a kind of
wisdom.
Respectability or what have you.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something they feel is accords to their status about that. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, like I say, it's how are you going to live a kind of highly effective life? And for me, I know to some extent you and I, everyone wastes time every day. But this is a choice you can make. Are you going to waste that time, or are you going to commit it to something more meaningful?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, hit me up.